Okay, let's dive in. So imagine this. One single house, but inside two completely separate worlds.
Hmm.
That's really our focus today. We're exploring the lives of these 13-year-old twin sisters, Catherine and Madeline. They live together, same roof, but wow, they experience reality in, well, really different ways.
Yeah, and we're digging into this using some really interesting material we received, the book outline and also the first chapter. It's called Two Worlds, One Home, which is, pretty spot on.
Totally.
This stuff really gives us a look, behind the curtain at how these two very distinct internal lives manage to coexist, all happening on Maple Street.
Right. So this deep dive, it's all about pulling out the key ideas from that material. We want to get a handle on their individual lives, naturally, but also that unique connection they have. It seems maybe unexpected.
Yeah, possibly.
And what their story tells us about connection, about understanding people, especially when they interact with the world so differently.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll be looking at Catherine first. She's described as autistic and nonverbal, and her world seems to revolve around, well, the comfort she gets from Peppa Pig, which is interesting, and this deep, really absorbing fascination she has with electronics.
Okay. And then you've got Madeline. She's described as shy, but super smart, and she finds her sort of intellectual stimulation by just completely diving into complex TV shows.
Right, binge watching, and not just anything. It mentions things like Law and Order, that gritty crime stuff.
Mm.
And then also something like Arcane, which is that really complex animated fantasy world. Big contrast.
Huge contrast, side by side in the same house.
It really is. And the material, it just gives us this great window, not just into their separate worlds, but crucially, what actually ties them together despite all those differences.
Okay, so let's start there then. Let's step into Catherine's world first. The material really leans into this connection she has with Peppa Pig. It sounds like it's, more than just a kid watching a show.
Oh, absolutely. Think of it less like just entertainment and more like a source of real predictable comfort for her.
Predictable, okay.
Yeah, the world in Peppa Pig, it's stable, right? The sounds, they're familiar, probably soothing. The stories are simple, they repeat. It creates this sense of safety, of security. The source describes it almost like it's a language she gets, a constant thing in her sensory world she can actually rely on.
That makes sense. And then there's this other really intense focus, electronics. The outline, the chapter, they don't just say, oh, she plays with gadgets. It talks about this really deep curiosity about how they function.
Right, taking things apart.
Yeah, taking apart old radios, remote controls, focusing with this incredible intensity on circuit boards. Her room sounds like it's, full of wires, batteries, bits and pieces, like a little workshop.
And that's such a key insight into how she engages with the physical world around her.
House.
Well, for someone who's nonverbal, this very tactile, very focused interaction with electronics, it offers a totally different way to understand things, maybe even communicate in a sense.
Oh.
It's a language of logic, cause and effect. You connect this wire, this thing happens, you take it apart, you see the structure inside. It provides that predictable sensory input, maybe a sense of control, of mastery. That must be incredibly grounding for her.
Right. So it paints this picture of a world built on routine, predictable sensory stuff, and the solid logic of physical things.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears. Just, metaphorically across the hall, we find Madeline's universe.
Completely different.
Totally. The material paints her as quiet, thoughtful, but really, really observant, just soaking everything in.
Watching.
Yeah, watching. But often from a bit of a distance, it seems like she finds connection and that mental stimulation she craves more easily in fictional stories than in, say, messy, unpredictable real-life conversations.
And her way in is binge watching.
Yep. Just devouring stories, analyzing the plots, the characters, their motives.
And the examples are so striking, like you said, Law and Order, that gritty realism, and then Arcane, this super detailed, fantastical, animated thing, worlds apart, even in her viewing habits.
Right. It's a huge jump from Peppa Pig's simple world to, complex crime scenes or these intricate steampunk battles. And the material explains how she watches. She's not just passive. She's analyzing plot twists. She's trying to predict what happens next. Having these silent reactions, apparently like cheering characters on, but all internally. It's partly an escape, sure, but it's also clearly her intellectual playground. It's a safe way for her, maybe because she's shy, to study people, conflict, how things resolve.
Okay, so you've got Catherine anchored in the predictable, the physical, the sensory, and Madeline finding her anchor in these complex Dory's intellectual analysis. How on earth do those two, like, seemingly opposite worlds even function together in one home?
Well, that's where their mother, Jacqueline, steps in. And the material really underscores her role. It sounds absolutely central and pretty demanding.
Yeah, I bet. The goal isn't just, getting by. It's about actively trying to create a home where both girls can actually thrive.
Yeah.
Each in her own way.
Which must take just immense love, obviously, but also patience and this really deep understanding, this attunement to each girl's very specific and often, very different needs.
Right.
The source material kind of hints at the practical side of this. Things like maybe visual schedules for Catherine to give her that routine she needs.
Okay.
And also structuring things at home to respect Madeline's need for quiet time, for space to think and process everything she's taking in.
Wow. It sounds like a constant, really delicate balancing act every single day, trying to manage these two completely different sets of needs side by side.
It does.
Yeah.
And yet, despite these huge differences in how they see the world, how they interact with it, maybe the most compelling thing in the material is their bond, this unspoken connection.
The twin bond.
Exactly. As twins, there's this connection that's described as running, deeper than words, deeper even than having the same interests.
This is where it gets really interesting, I think. The material gives examples, little things, of how this bond actually shows up.
Mm-hmm. Small gestures.
Yes, subtle gestures, quick looks between them. It says Madeline seems to just know instinctively what Catherine needs, even without her saying anything.
Right.
There's even an image description mention of Catherine just reaching out to touch Madeline, just a simple physical touch showing that connection.
And here's a really fascinating link the material makes. Madeline's intense observation skills, the ones she sharpens by, picking apart plots and character motives in those shows.
Yeah.
Those skills become critical in her actual life with Catherine. She uses that same analytical ability to piece together clues about Catherine's feelings, her frustrations, maybe challenges she's having. She's basically reading her sister's subtle nonverbal cues like she'd analyze evidence in a crime show.
Whoa. So her skill at solving fictional mysteries actually translates directly into understanding her own sister's quiet signals. That's pretty amazing.
It really is, isn't it? It's like she's applying those analytical tools to a different kind of data, a much more personal, intuitive kind. The material also mentions moments where Catherine might have an unexpected reaction, something that surprises everyone. And sometimes those moments lead to new understandings or maybe new challenges, shifts in the dynamic. And there's this hint, this possibility of some kind of shared discovery, potentially bridging their worlds.
Like what?
Well, maybe an electronic game that Catherine enjoys that Madeline finds a way to join in on. Or perhaps using electronics somehow as a new way for them to communicate.
Interesting.
It really highlights that connection doesn't always need conventional methods.
Yeah.
Their twin bond, their nonverbal world. It creates its own unique language that's constantly evolving.
So looking a bit broader, the material also touches on the challenges they face just being 13.
Right. Typical teenage stuff, but amplified.
Yeah, for Catherine, it mentions navigating her specialized classroom, presumably with an aide helping out. And for Madeline, it's about observing the, complex social scene of mainstream school, but from her preferred distance.
Those are tough ages for anyone.
Right.
And their individual situations add extra layers. The material really stresses how important family patience and just consistent support are during this time of change.
And the narrative seems to focus on small victories as being really key.
Yes.
Like for Catherine, maybe it's figuring out a new way to express something she needs or mastering some new electronic skill. And for Madeline, maybe a small victory is initiating a conversation, even a short one, or finding the courage to actually share some of her, vast knowledge about one of her shows with someone.
And those aren't really small victories, are they? In their context, they're huge steps, significant progress. The core message that seems woven through all this material is that their individual journeys and their unique changing bond, that's what makes their family whole, what makes it strong.
They move through the world together, side by side.
Yeah, but each in their own way, still deeply connected.
So when you step back and look at Catherine and Madeline's story, based on this material, what's the big takeaway? It really feels like a powerful reminder that connection, real understanding, it doesn't always require speaking the same language, literally or figuratively.
No.
Or even having the same hobbies.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And it really pushes you, I think, to reconsider what counts as like profound engagement or deep interest.
Yeah.
Things that might seem simple from the outside, like the predictable world of Peppa Pig,
Yeah.
or being totally absorbed in taking apart a radio, or even, the solitary act of binge watching complex shows.
Hmm.
For these individuals, these aren't trivial things at all. They're fundamental sources of comfort, ways of learning, essential tools for just interacting with the world and making sense of it all.
It really leaves you thinking, doesn't it, about the quiet worlds that might exist in your own life, or in the lives of people you know really well, worlds you might be overlooking.
Definitely. How might, just looking a bit closer, maybe with a bit more patience, more careful observation, how might that reveal completely new depths, maybe surprising connections in the people closest to you?